Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for inviting me and share this with you. I thought that before I start talking about private-public partnerships, I will just give a very brief introduction of what PRIF is. So the Pacific Region Infrastructure Facility, we were established in 2009, and we are now starting the third phase of the project. We are financed by 7 development partners, and we work in 13 Pacific Island countries. The focus of the phase 3, which started just now in April and will run for the next 3 years, will be mainly infrastructure planning and infrastructure maintenance. So we do TAs to support countries, and we do knowledge products to support development partners on these areas. So all our TAs and all our knowledge products have some elements of strategic planning, infrastructure maintenance, disaster risk reduction, and work with specific sector projects within the countries. Cross-cutting issues are fostering private sector participation, building capacity, and engagement with regional organizations. So as highlights what we did until now, we implemented or we developed the national infrastructure investment plans for 7 countries in the Pacific. And we also conduct implementation reviews so that we come back and see what has been implemented and how useful it was, and then create monitoring frameworks and help countries monitor their NIP implementations by themselves. We are doing that now in Tonga, and they are preparing their first NIP implementation monitoring review by themselves. We also do specific sector TAs. For example, we developed the Nauru Port pre-feasibility study. We are starting now the due diligence of the Nuku'alofa network distribution upgrade. And we do, for example, with the Water Authority of Fiji, we are helping them with their tariff and financial strategy review. And in terms of research and knowledge products, we have the study of maintenance budgets in the Cook Island, which is a very interesting report, and all these reports are available in the website. And benchmarking reports where we work with utilities of all the Pacific countries and others. These are some reports that are going to be published in the next month or 2. Very interesting is the road pavement design, which is a study that will look at using locally available materials to construct pavement. So that is just a brief introduction on what PRIF is. Now we're getting to the subject of what are public-private partnerships and how can they help in asset management. So just as a reference, I think you might have on your table, I gave some documents to be distributed to you. There is this infrastructure maintenance in the Pacific, which is a brief publication which was developed by Kerry McGovern, who is here. It's a very interesting report, and I brought some copies for you. It should be one in each table. by now. And also the Private Sector Development Initiative, which reviewed this presentation and provided comments and input. And also there is information from this reference book, which can be downloaded in that homepage, which is excellent, by the way. It has a lot of, even templates of bid documents. So what is a public-private partnership? It's a contract that it is between the government and the private sector, and it is to provide a service to the public, to the people. So there are a lot of studies that discuss in which way this contract should be developed so that it fulfills that purpose for the people, that it is for the people. So one of the characteristics is that there is actually no widely accepted definition. It can, for some countries, PPPs are any contract with a private entity. And in other countries, it is more like a concession kind of contract. We are going to go through all the types. These type of contracts, they can be used in almost all infrastructure sectors. And one characteristic is that it is performance-based. So the payments are done based on successful achievement of those standards. The contract is also based on the type, based on these three different types. So first, the type of asset. Is it a new asset or is it an existing asset? New assets are called greenfield assets, and upgrading existing assets will be called brownfield assets. So that's the first thing we need to identify. Then we need to identify which function are we talking about, which is the function that we are going to give the company the responsibility for. So, and then we're talking about the design, or build, or rehabilitate, or are they going to finance the asset? Are they going to maintain it? Or are they going to operate it? Or is a mishmash of a lot of functions, and normally it is. And then there is, how is the private party going to be paid? Is it user pay, or is the government going to pay? So I don't know if you had already received a copy of a table. Is there one in each table, that photocopies that I gave? Yeah. So there is a table with different kind of contracts, depending on which function and which type of asset and which payment mechanism it is. So here they are. So from pure public to pure private, there is a long gray area of things that we can put in together to build what we really need from the company. So we're going to go through it, but I'm not going to discuss each one of them, and not pure public or pure private. So the service contracts, they are not considered really a PPP contract, because they are simply a service contract where the government will contract a company to fulfill whatever service they need. For example, waste collection. They are normally very short contracts. When we get into management and operation, there are a lot of contracts that are already private public partnership contracts. And we will talk a lot about specifically these kind of contracts because they could be seen as a stepping stone into more complex PPP contracts. So in these kind of contracts, the contractor will receive a management fee, which is based on performance. And the performance is measured based on specific service levels that the government wants to achieve. And then we have the design, build, operate, maintain. There is the design, build, operate, maintain, and transfer, which could be, for example, IPP for a new wind plant. Those contracts are actually very, very useful because they create an element of incentive for the contractor. Because if you contract a private company to build a road and leave, then they will just build it as shiny as they can and as quickly as they can, as cheap as they can, and leave. And then you need to maintain it. It's not their problem. If they need to build and maintain, then the whole thing changes a lot, because then they will have to think about how much it will cost me to maintain. So they will maybe use other materials. They will make it last longer. So there are a lot of things that the contractor will think about before they even start building. They will think about it in the design, which they didn't think before. So that element of incentive of the contractor to do a better work, and also to allow them to earn fair returns for their investment by making it a long contract. You can have a 20, 30-year contract where they can build and operate and gain returns from it and then transfer it to the government, so that they have a lot of incentive to maintain a service level. And the concessions, they are more when it can also involve rehabilitation. So all until now, it can also involve rehabilitation. For example, design, build, finance, operate, and maintain can be design, rehabilitate, finance, operate, and maintain. And concessions are the most complex kind of PPPs. And they need a lot of capacity in the government also to manage the contracts. So the maintenance challenge in the Pacific, as that booklet also states, is that we are in a build, neglect, rebuild vicious cycle. We build it and we don't maintain it until it is totally impossible to rehabilitate it, and then we have to rebuild it again. The spending in maintenance should be between 2 or 8% of the investing, of the investment. And investing in maintenance actually saves money. There is a lot of study telling us that. Another thing we need to think about is that when we don't maintain one sector, for example, roads, it actually affects many other sectors. It affects your agriculture. It affects kids going to school. It affects a lot of, in your population, in health. Poor electricity affects almost everything, hospitals. So it's not just about not maintaining this road. It's a lot bigger than that. So that's something we also need to think about. And PPPs can help because of the incentives that they bring to both the private contractors and the government to make quality a priority. It will be a priority for the government because the government will then have a contract. You have a contract, you have to budget for it, you will have to pay it. So it has to be budgeted for. You cannot use the money for something else anymore because you have to pay your contractor. And for the contractor, it is a part of the whole PPP contract. So it is up to them to do it as efficient as they can so that they can also make more margin. There are some limitations though. And one of the main limitations is that to get a PPP contract running, it could take a long time and a lot of capacity building, not only within the government to be able to design these kind of contracts, but also with the private sector to help them being able to write a proposal for a PPP. It's not an easy task. Also, if the contractor doesn't have much equity, then they could decide to just walk away from the contract and not spend in costly maintenance. So, and if it is right at the end of the contract, they also might lose incentive to do maintenance. So it is important to have a risk assessment done before so that these risks can be taken into consideration while developing the contract. So as we said, PPP can be used in all infrastructure sectors. And the ones that have maintenance functions, they can be found mostly in water and sanitation, solid waste management, energy and transport. So in the energy sector, for example, we have implementation agreements, we have concessions, land lease agreements. In the water and waste sector, we have mostly design, build, operate, and maintain agreements. In the transport infrastructure, for airports, we have concessions mostly. Ports, we have concessions or landlord ports. For shipping and for roads, we have performance-based contracts, which are the ones I will focus a little bit more. Performance-based contracts, they started in, well, I think they started in the US, but they are used a lot in Latin America. If we go through the types of contracts that exist, we have the unit price contracts. Let's take roads. We have the unit price contracts where the contractor is paid depending on how much quantity they do. For example, if they fix 1 kilometer or 2 kilometer road or 1 hole or 2 holes, they get paid. The lump sum contract is the one where you say, okay, you are going to get paid when you finish 100 kilometers. Now the performance-based contract, that is based on service quality. So you will have your service levels, which we were talking yesterday as well. You will identify your performance indicators, and they will need to achieve that, and they will get paid only if they achieve that. And there are also hybrid contracts where you have a mix of those. So the performance standards will be the minimum conditions of your asset and the management and operations of the assets during that specific time period. It's interesting that this leaves the contractor to decide what exactly they will do, when they will do it, how to do it, and where to do it. You don't have that in your contract. You only have standards that they need to achieve. So they are free to do it how they think it will be more effective. And they will get paid as long as the performance standards are met. So this gives a great incentive for the contractor as well to do it in creative ways so that they will still deliver the performance and the standards that the governments are after, but in a way that they can maybe make more margin. So they are going to try for that. So then we have, in these contracts, we have lump sum payments. So they are made periodically. We could also include some major emergency or rehabilitation work, which could be paid in unit prices. There are deductions and penalties. If they do not comply to those standards, they get penalized. And the duration of the contract is it's longer than a normal service contract, but it is not as long as a design, build, operate, maintain contract. So it's something in between. So the performance standards, that's something the government should choose. What is important? So that, again, will be linked, for example, to the transport sector strategy, which will be linked again to the national development strategy of your own countries. So you will have to, based on those, come up with standards that you would like for your roads. Is that the user that is important? So are you going to say that accessibility, comfort, travel speed, is that important? Or maybe it's important to minimize the total cost so that the government pays less and the user pays less, or is it to minimize the impact to the environment? So I just put in here an example of performance standards in Argentina, Chile, and Uruguay. So that is what they check every month, if these standards are complied or not. And based on this, and only this, they pay the contractors. And these are some service levels that I thought it was useful to put in. So you need to monitor that. So the role of the government is not going out there and actually doing the maintenance, is inspecting the assets, so to check whether the contractors did a good job or not. So there are ways to do that. You could leave it to the contractor to self-evaluate themselves, self-evaluate and come back to you with reports. You could do inspections, you could do informal inspections, or you can also have like a complaints system. Just put here an example of Uruguay, how they do it. So they inspect once a month, 10% of the road network, selected randomly. Then once a week they select 5% and they check them, they inspect them randomly as well. They inspect when they have a complaint from the public, and they also follow up inspections to verify that what was detected before has been fixed. And there are penalties. These are the penalties. So if they find that there is no cracking or raveling on pavement roads, they have to pay $88 a week per kilometer. So that is deducted from their monthly payment or periodic payment. So there are some benefits, and it also has disadvantages. So the benefits for the road agency is that it reduces the workload a lot. So it changes the role of the road agency from being the one that conducts the maintenance to the one that inspects. And it's more a contract management role as well. So it will change the mentality of the government, the people in the government. It will provide more transparency and accountability, reduces maintenance cost, improves control and enforcement, reduces rehabilitation because the maintenance is happening, and drastically reduces the risk, because the risk is now with the companies to actually maintain that asset. The disadvantages, though, is that the tender process is very long. In Brazil, it took almost 1.5 years to have a contract in place. It takes long. But once it is in place, it also, in Brazil particularly, worked really well. It requires new procedures, a mentality change within the government, and training. You lose flexibility. As we were saying before, the government will have a contract that they need to pay every month. So there is no flexibility of using that budget for other things. And there is a loss of expertise because the government is not the one who is going to be conducting the maintenance themselves. For the road users, there is no disadvantages, and the roads are actually better and safer in a consistent way. It's every day the same, not when they build it for a couple of months and then it starts deteriorating. For the contractors, the incentives are that it is a guaranteed workload for a long period of time. There is a potential to increase margins because they will have a fixed contract, a fixed lump sum payment every month. And it depends, it's up to them to be more efficient and to do things better, to reduce their cost. They will still receive that lump sum payment. And of course, it's an opportunity to grow their business. Now, the disadvantages is that it increases their risk. The risk is now on the private sector. And it, again, requires new procedures within the company and change the mentality of the company, maybe training. So just some case studies here. In Brazil, for example, in their contracts, they have deferred maintenance. They included routine maintenance. They have rehabilitation works and improvement works. They're all paid in different ways. I have information about this. So if you are interested in knowing more about each one of these cases, I'm more than happy to give you more information. This has also been used in Chad, and I understand now African countries are also using these kind of contracts. In the PICs, I couldn't find any performance-based contract. But the PSDI, the Private Sector Development Initiative, they gave me 2 case studies. One is in Samoa, where they had the design, build, operate, and maintain contract with a contractor for the wastewater treatment plant in Apia. So the contract resulted, is finished now, but it finalized on budget and on time and within the standards that they wanted, and now has been transferred to Samoa Water Authority last year. So this is a good, maybe in a couple of years we will go back and see how the Samoa Water Authority is doing. And in FSM, we have the 5 million colonias sewage treatment plant, was also a GBOM modality. That it has been extended. So yeah, I have also more information about it. If you need, I'm happy to give it to you. I also put in your table, there is a lessons learned in performance-based management and maintenance. I put it in specifically because yesterday we were discussing about the problem of overloading, vehicle overloading, and they identified that as one of the issues of this type of contracts, and they are making suggestions on how to overcome that. Right. Thank you very much.